Chairman Musel, we should be ready to go.
Are we live and ready to go, Linda?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
And Tedrick Hausch is on now, so we have everyone.
Welcome everyone to the third meeting of the 2021 Johnson County Charter Commission. We appreciate your patience as we're a little past our 4 o'clock start time, working on some technical matters. If you're in Johnson County now, you know we're undergoing some rainstorms. I'm not sure that was a technical matter, but if anybody has a problem with their connection, we'll understand for that reason. I'm Greg Musel. I was selected as to chair the Charter Commission at our last meeting. Welcome everybody here. I noted that our Vice Chair Don Rattan is on and our Secretary Ed Peterson is on. We'll start now with the roll call of the members of the commission. Linda, if you would call the roll, please.
Wendy Bingasser.
Wendy Bingasser, present.
Mike Boehm.
Mike Boehm, present.
Karen Brownlee.
Karen Brownlee, present.
Vicki Charlesworth.
Vicki Charlesworth, present.
Jim Denning.
Jim Denning, present.
Jane Dirks.
Jane Dirks, present.
Jimmy Gaona.
Jimmy Gaona, present.
Tedrick Hausch.
Tedrick Hausch, present.
Randy Hutchins. Randy Hutchins.
I don't see him on audio.
Okay, we'll come back. Chris Iliff.
Present.
Laura Klingensmith.
Laura Klingensmith, present.
Joy Costin.
Joy is present. I see her, but she was muted. There we go.
I'm here.
Thank you. Brent McCune.
Brent McCune is here.
Eric Michelson.
Eric Michelson here.
Ed Peterson.
Ed Peterson, present.
Don Ratton.
Don Rattan, present.
Thank you. Leslie Riverola.
Leslie Riverola, present.
Don Roberts.
Don Roberts, present.
Kyle Russell.
Kyle Russell, present.
Paula Schwach. Brenda Sharp.
Brenda Sharp, present.
Greg Shelton.
Greg Shelton, present.
Greg Smith.
Greg Smith here.
Zach Thomas.
Zach Thomas here.
And we show Randy Hutchins is on with the video, but his audio is not on. And Chairman Musel.
Congratulations and thank you for perfect attendance. I won't say this every meeting, but at the initial part of this, every 10 years, the Johnson County Charter form of government adopted in 2000 requires a charter commission appointed of 25 citizens of Johnson County to review the structure of the government and to learn more about it, hold at least one public hearing, and then make any recommendations to the county commission, either for placing items on the ballot or, as was done in the 2011 Charter Commission, suggesting by resolution certain actions that the county is encouraged to take. The 25 people that are members of the commission serve without compensation, and we're going to take a lot of each other's time. So I thank everybody for participating. I guess if you're watching this, you probably know how to reach us, but we are available on the Facebook page. If you go to Facebook and search for JocoGov, @JocoGov, you will find us. You can also find a link on the county's website, www.jocogov.org. For members of the commission, we mentioned this last time, but if you need a break, just hustle to your break. You don't have to stick around, and we will talk about whether we need a break in the middle of the meeting, but for 2 hours, we'll probably try to plow through. If you need to leave would you please reflect that in the chat so that Linda can record when people were there instead of trying to keep an eye on everybody? If you have to come to a meeting late, would you also record that in the chat? That will assist Linda in keeping an accurate record. We do have a quorum with all 25 members present. The first item of business is to consider approval of the minutes from the April 12th, 2021 meeting. Those were provided to each of you last week by Linda. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as presented last week? Please just speak up as opposed to raising your hand since I can't see everybody on my screen.
I move approval as presented. Brenda Sharp.
Second.
Thank you.
Brent McKeon.
Moved by Brenda Sharp and seconded by Brent McCune to approve the minutes for the April 12th meeting as presented. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? No. The minutes have been approved. You also saw the agenda for tonight's meeting that was the function of a comprehensive call I had with county staff that included Assistant County Manager Maury Thompson, Interim County Counselor Cindy Dunham, and Linda Sater as Deputy Clerk, who's really our guru for this. And then on Saturday, I was able to meet with Vice Chair Don Rattan and Secretary Ed Peterson to go through this. We don't have any old business. The first item of new business is a presentation on the Kansas Open Meetings Act. Again, this is a technical law designed to make sure that decisions are made in the public's eye and that we don't act as a body outside of a public meeting. It can get sticky in the human experience when we talk to one another. And so Cindy is going to give us an update. And I think if at any time during this process you have a concern about that, please contact me or contact Cindy about the issue that you have. With that, I will turn it over to Cindy.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm Cindy Dunham, and I am currently serving as the interim chief counsel for the county. My regular title is Deputy Director of the Legal Department, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's get that. Oh, there we go. All right, is it showing up? Someone, okay, I see some nods, great. The first meeting we went over this, and I understand too that many, if not most of you, are either currently or have served on a board or council subject to the Open Meetings Act. And so while my presentation will be brief, I can't emphasize enough that you should contact myself, the chairman, and I know there's, as I think about half dozen other lawyers on this meeting, but we want to make sure that we comply, and it's always good to raise questions as they come up to make sure we're in compliance. So with that, I'm going to make this brief.
Cindy, we're seeing both screens.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I can make that go away. No, so I apologize. Let me try again here. Okay.
And it wouldn't be Zoom without this.
I'm sorry. Now, are you seeing one screen or two now?
We're seeing
Nothing.
you.
You're seeing me. Okay. Let me start.
You haven't shared, I don't think.
Okay. I'll hit share. Stop share. Now it says you are screen sharing. I apologize.
Perfect.
We're seeing your Zoom screen of the web, and
Let
we're
me go ahead and
seeing,
hit the PowerPoint. How about that?
there we go.
Yeah.
Let me switch it to the, okay, and let me switch it back. Hold on. I think I know what to do here. Swap. Okay. How about that?
It's
We are
good.
ready. I'm perfect. Accept a motion to adjourn after that.
All right. With
Thank you,
here we
Cindy.
go. Again, I know you are all very familiar that it is our public policy in the state of Kansas that you conduct the affairs of this charter commission in open, and that the public be able to view and observe what you do, and we liberally construe that. And all meetings of the Charter Commission are going to be open. You cannot take binding action in secret or outside of this meeting. And then we need to talk about what is a meeting, and that's gotten complicated over the years. First of all, it's a gathering or assembly that can be in person, or now, as we all well know, via a telephone, Zoom, or other interactive communication. It must include the majority of the membership to be defined as a meeting. And then it is for the purpose of discussing the business or affairs of the Charter Commission. So obviously the in-person is pretty straightforward and has been what we've been used to before the advances in technology recently. But to be clear, it does include informal discussions before, after, or during recesses when we are meeting in public. So keep that in mind. And then, as we know, again, you can conduct meetings via phone and other mediums, so long as we comply with all the COMA requirements. Interactive communications is now a term that we didn't used to have, and I think we all know what that means. And basically that means some kind of reciprocal or interactive exchange between members of the Charter Commission. It is a two-way communication. So a one-way message to everyone, let's say you send a message to everyone on the Charter Commission, it's just one way, and you're thinking, well, Cindy said that's not interactive, and you would be correct. The concern, though, is as soon as somebody hits reply all, it makes it interactive. And so that is the number one piece of advice you see now on all the Open Meetings Act presentations that are given by the Attorney General, DA, and all others that do training is don't hit the reply all button. And so we do need to be cautious of that, because all of a sudden you've got an interactive communication when somebody just wanted to share something and didn't want to have a discussion. And this interaction would apply not just to emails, but it can apply to messaging, calling trees, those kinds of things. So it can be in any format that we basically communicate now. And that's a segue into serial meetings, which are subject to the Open Meetings Act. And that was something that had to be defined. Again, I think it was understood that these kinds of things were happening. But to make it clear, the legislature did add serial meetings to the Open Meetings Act and define them. And basically what they are is they collectively involve a majority of the members of the Charter Commission, and you would share a topic of discussion concerning the business of the Charter Commission. And they're intended by any or all of the participants to reach an agreement on a matter that would require binding action to be taken by the body. So to give you an example is, well, you may decide to speak or email or Facebook message or text message a couple of your fellow commissioners, and perhaps unbeknownst to you, then they are one or more of them is then communicating with a few others, and maybe over coffee, maybe again, any form of communication. And before you know it, what you have is then there's been communication going on that hits a majority of you, and you may not even know it's happened. So that's why you always need to be careful about your communications and keep that in mind, that in that number 3, it may be not intended by you to communicate with a majority, but it could end up happening that way, or someone else may have that intention, because that's what we've seen happen in a couple situations in Kansas. And again, a majority, it's a simple majority, that's 13 of you. I know that's a large group. And so when I'm speaking to you about these interactive communications, I realize that it may be going through your head, well, that's 13 of us, that's a lot. And I realize that, but you do have to be aware that you do have to be cautious with that and careful to avoid any type of coma situation. And again, under coma, it's discussion that triggers the Open Meetings Act. So even if no action or vote is taken, it's the discussion. And then very briefly, sometimes people are under the idea that there's a special kind of notice provision in the Open Meetings Act. It doesn't have to be published in a certain place, but in a few minutes, we're going to be talking about your website. And of course, we want to get out notice of your meeting in as many places as possible. So it's not about the legal requirements. It's about to be as transparent and communicative as possible. Also, at the beginning of the pandemic in March of last year, a new regulations were issued for the state to ensure compliance with the Open Meetings Act during an emergency declaration. And the regs give some very good, what you would call direction on how to conduct virtual meetings. They're what we've all become accustomed to. The main thing I will note that is always important is to make it clear what the motion is, who's voting and how they're voting, those kinds of things that maybe aren't as apparent on Zoom, although I do notice, I think everyone I'm seeing has their name underneath, so that does help, but it can get confusing. And I know for Linda Sater acting as the clerk, she will need that clarification of who's voting how on different motions. So, and then as far as the conduct of the meeting, the public may attend and observe all open meetings, but it doesn't mean they're allowed to speak or place items on your agenda. You control your agenda. And then, as already mentioned, the Home Rule Charter does require that you have one public hearing where the public can provide comments. You can have more if you want. We've already talked about voting in open meetings. And then also the Home Rule Charter actually does require that you keep minutes and report them in the official journal. And that's Linda Sater will be here to do that and make sure that we are in compliance with the Home Rule Charter on that matter. And then just as a reminder, you're subject to the Open Records Act also. And staff is here to assist in keeping all those records, and again, making them as transparent as possible, putting as much on your website as you would like us to and direct us to. And just be cognizant of that as you create records as we go along, that they may be subject to the Open Records Act. And I believe with that, unless you have any questions, I will turn it back over to the chairman.
Thank you, Cindy. Questions? Greg Shelton, you have your hand up.
I didn't think I did, but I will bring it up.
There's a hand over your fireplace. Maybe that's a piece of art.
Maybe.
Okay. Any questions for Cindy?
Oh, yeah, this is Brenda Sharp. You went over that last slide really quickly, but I just wanted to point out that that newer provision around the personal email counts too. So
yes, thank you. The Open Records Act was amended. I can't remember quite how many years ago, but within the last 10 years, to specify that it doesn't matter where the record's kept. So that if you keep all your if you have records that are actually open under Open Records Act, charter business, that would be open records, just because it's on your, whether it's your home PC or your tablet or your own email account, those kinds of things, that if they're actually Charter Commission records, then the open records would apply to that regardless of where it's kept. And so that was to actually, the legislature made that change to address growing concerns that folks were basically retaining records in other places, and to make it clear that those are still, if they're open records, then they're still subject to the Open Records Act, regardless of where they're located. Thank you.
And with respect to that, I think my recommendation would be that you keep a separate folder and put all your Charter Commission communications in that one folder. If we did get a Cora request, that would simplify the work for Linda and Cindy, and would minimize the possibility that somebody's going to go through every single email in your system, although there still might be that possibility of search. But other questions on the Open Meetings Act? And I don't want to belabor it, but we want to be careful about it. And again, if we have any questions, please, I think Cindy would be the best place to start, but I'm happy to be the bridge for that.
Randy Hutchins, I got a question for Cindy. So just point of clarification, a meeting consists of more than 2 people, is that correct?
Well, in your case, a meeting is a simple majority of your 25 members, and so that is actually 13. So as far as an actual open meeting that the act applies to.
So bottom line is 10 of us could meet for coffee, and that's not considered a meeting, is that correct?
Yes and no. Maybe that particular when you're having that cup of coffee, but the concern is that the moment you leave that and you go and say, hey, you see someone else on the Charter Commission, or you text somebody, or you Facebook message them, or you post something on their Facebook, hey, we were having coffee and we talked about this and that. And before you know it, you have just added in 3 more people, and it may not even be you personally. It may be only one, and then there may be someone else that talks to another one. So you have to be very careful about your communications. It does allow you, and I don't know if this is maybe where you're going, you can certainly have subcommittees that can meet and do work. My recollection is the last Charter Commission did some subcommittee work. So you do have that opportunity to do some subcommittee work, but it is, you do need to always be thinking about that when you're communicating about the Charter Commission with other Charter Commission members.
Thank you for the clarification.
Other questions? If not, we'll move on to the second item on our new business, which was rules of order. What Dawn and Ed and I discussed on Saturday was that our plan would be, we're trying to get a hold of the rules adopted by the Charter Commission in March of 2011, use those as a template. We would anticipate presenting you a set of proposed rules for the next meeting, which will be May 10th, to be adopted at the meeting, the last meeting in May, the 4th Wednesday. Is that the 26th? I didn't write that down. But we would plan to get those to you before the next meeting so we could discuss them at the May 10th meeting, but not take any action on them until the following meeting. So everybody has a chance to look at the rules. In the interim, I'm going to do what I believe are Robert's Rules of Orders. I don't think we're going to have any complicated parliamentary issues in these first couple meetings. The proposed rules will deal more with when we have to have a roll call vote, when we specifically want to have votes, how are amendments, how are topics brought to the fore, those types of items. I have not been asking for a roll call vote on every motion like approving the minutes, unless I hear a number of no's, and I think we need to call for a roll call, try to save a little time so we can get more to the substance. Does anybody have any specific question on that plan? Not, we'll move on into public input and commentary. This is something we discussed a little bit last time. And the plan at this point is that on the website that we'll talk about in a minute, there will be an area for public comment. Those public comments will be collected and shared probably on a weekly basis with every member of the commission. And so there will be a disclaimer or a notice on the website. Probably an automatic response. Thank you for your comment. These will be shared with all of the commission members. Those comments will be recorded and kept for archive purposes, but will not necessarily be present on the website and visible to the public beyond those individual comments. Any specific questions about that? And that can be revisited, but that's the plan right now. Is I think the number one thing we want to do is kind of get the website up.
Greg, this is Paula Schwach. My question is this: if in the process of receiving a comment, someone also makes an inquiry, how will that be handled?
At this point, we hadn't really resolved this, but what I would do is ask Linda to forward it to me, and we will work with county staff to get an appropriate response. If it's a substantive question about why don't you do this, it will be, everybody will see those and we'll deal with it when we get to the point in time when we're looking at specific proposals. So I think we'll do that kind of on a case-by-case basis, but that's a good question. All right, we're moving along. Future meetings. And again, we did this earlier. I think we're going to do it again. There are issues. There are a number of issues we've talked about with staff and with the executive committee. We would like to find a location to start in-person meetings, and we would like that location to be a permanent home. So we're not changing locations for meetings and having people show up at the wrong Big Biscuit as I had this morning on a breakfast meeting. So And the the Arts and Heritage Center is not available for all of our meeting times. So that's why you noted on the agenda that we're planning the May 10th meeting completely virtual so that we give staff a little additional time to find hopefully a permanent place to land. The other issue is ensuring that the technology is available so that members of the commission can participate by Zoom virtually if you so choose. We need to make sure it's published, if you will, to the public so the public can observe. And if there are charter commission members who want to appear virtually or choose to or are out of town, we want to make sure that's available. We're limited on county space, as the largest room in the bottom of the basement of the administration building holds 25 people socially distanced. So we're going to get back to you with a plan on that. We also may do another doodle poll, Linda, on if we hold in-person meetings and people are going to attend, will you be willing to wear a mask or not? And it's not to get an individual answers, but to determine if folks would attend an in-person meeting, if everybody was masked, but won't do it if somebody isn't masked, or if we can socially distance those who are uncomfortable wearing a mask. We're trying to make sure that everybody gets to participate, hopefully in person, and if not, by virtual, and without getting into individual issues with respect to underlying health conditions, masking, those types of issues. The county commission tomorrow will be taking action, as I understand it, on whether or not to extend or allow the existing public health order to expire at the end of the month, which is Friday. So that's really more an announcement than anything else. We're still trying to figure out where to have them, if we can have them in person, but I think we may do another doodle poll to figure out how many people are willing to appear in person, and if masked or unmasked makes a difference to your willingness to appear in person. Any questions on that? All right, I'm going to use the chair's prerogative so that we can leave the balance of the meeting to the county manager, Penny Post Oak Ferguson, and jump to number 7 at least, to talk about future topics. One of the things we intend to do is to get to each of you a document that looks like this. It has the 26 agencies, divisions, departments of the county with a brief summary of what they do, so that we can, and with some type of then follow-up question to allow you to rank, everybody to rank, what do you want to hear about? What do you want to know more about? If everybody ranks something a 5, we'll give it more time. You know, we're trying to allocate our time. And I think Mayor Bay mentioned last time that going through every one of these probably isn't the best use of our time. So we're going to try to prioritize those, find out about which ones you really want to hear about. If you want to know more about one that nobody else wants to know, maybe we'll do another written response to questions or some other format. But again, the plan is to get that to you before the May 10th meeting, so that at the May 10th meeting, we'll have some idea of how to prioritize the discussion for the end of May meeting. We do have a plan. Oh, go ahead, Mayor.
Yes, question. Will there be an opportunity, if we think the county should be doing something that it's not doing at all, to raise that issue?
In the initial County 101, as I call it, I think we're just looking for the structure and the providing of services as they are today. But certainly, I think if there are areas, those can be raised as questions. We're gonna follow that up, presumably with the sitting commissioners, to hear their perspective. And then as we get into topics, we'll certainly have the opportunity to say, why isn't the county erecting a statute to Greg Musil? Because I know that's on everybody's mind. So yes, it may not be in this first part, because this is more the framework and teaching us what we're doing now and how the structure of the county government works with what is being provided now. For May 10th, as I mentioned at the end of the agenda, I received confirmation today that we will hear from 3 of the larger, and I think we all agreed more important areas of county government. 2 of them are elected officials countywide, the district attorney and the sheriff, and then also the chief judge from Johnson County, Kelly Ryan. We have a brand new courthouse that the voters approved. And so obviously the judicial branch is an important part of the county government. It has an intermix of state and local funding and responsibilities. Our May 10th meeting will be spent largely with those 3 entities being described. Beyond that meeting, we'll look for a prioritization of other county departments. I put in under number 7 to prioritize future presentations, the county manager, county commissioners, and departments and agencies. So those are on the agenda. So some of that, and we'll get more details as we move forward, but does anybody have a question about that roughed out plan?
Greg, just one comment, referring back to Mayor Schwartz's suggestion. I think it makes a lot of sense if you have those ideas, go ahead and share them with the chair now, start sharing those with county staff so they have an ability to start doing some research on those types of things. So when we get to that opportunity to talk about new things and commissioner ideas, we're somewhat prepared rather than starting the process at that point. We don't necessarily need to put them on agendas yet, but I think if we get that out in the public early, we'll be more prepared midway through this when it's time to start chewing on those ideas. Also, if you don't mind, when you pause for questions, it seems like an eternity when you're waiting and no one's responding, but by the time I find my mouse, get it to the right screen and unmute, you've moved on and I don't have a chance to jump in. So remember that when you're moving through the process.
Okay, so the way to keep Mike Bain from talking is to move quickly. Got it. All right. It seems like, I know it seems like I'm pausing forever, but this group is not a group of quiet folks. You're all engaged, so do not hesitate to interrupt me if I have moved on too quickly. I will not take it personally. We need to make sure everybody has an opportunity. Anything else on the future meetings?
Hey, Greg.
Joy Costin.
Yeah, so if we do have recommendations for agencies that we'd like to hear from, we send that to you and Linda. Would that be the proper?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have instructions when the document comes out that summarizes those. And frankly, I haven't talked to Linda or my executive committee about this. I would like to have you rank the importance you feel about individual departments. I don't have a scale, but that way, if everybody is ranking something really highly as important, we'll try to give it more time on the agenda. If we hear from one for 5 minutes and everybody all of a sudden decides that's more important than we thought, we'll come back to it.
Okay,
so
thank you.
There are 26 different agencies, divisions, departments on the list. So if we gave each of them a half an hour, we would be 13 hours or 7 meetings for that process. So I think there is some advantage to trying to see if we can prioritize those. And as always, if somebody wants to make the case that the one that we're leaving out is important, we're all going to listen to it, and we'll figure that out. With that, the first presentation that we're going to have is from County Manager Penny Postoke Ferguson. I want to express up front the fact that what Penny is doing today should be received and is intended to be delivered as purely informational. Part of our role here is to review the structure of the county, which includes a county manager form of government with 7 commissioners and a county manager, the role that Penny holds now. So in that sense, we are evaluating the role of county manager and how it does, and eventually later how it should function. But we're not evaluating Penny, and she is going to try to be objective today. We anticipate having a second session with her where we can consider more about how is it working? Why is it working? What from a professional staff position could we do better? But those are for down the line. So one of the things that is of concern, I think, to Penny and to county staff is placing staff in a position to critique the structure that they're functioning in, and particularly when it comes to the county commission or the county manager. So we know that's part of our role. We don't want that to start today. Today is our start of County Government 101. And we're going to have basically the balance of our meeting tonight with Penny. I think she's got a video to show us and then a presentation, and then we will have plenty of time for questions, I believe. So with that, Penny, I will turn the floor over to you. Thank you for being here.
Okay, thank you for having me. I will start a few slides because I want to give a context of who we serve. What is the environment of Johnson County? And then I want to transition to how we serve, and I'll show the video then because I think it helps illustrate how some of our functions. And yes,
this is Greg, and I apologize for interrupting, but I know everybody's going to want to know: are we going to get these slides? And the answer is yes. And
I believe Linda, you sent them out already to the commission. Is that correct?
They have been circulated, yes.
Yes, I sent it out in an email today along with the meeting list of Mondays and Wednesdays. And I also sent out commission charter member information to you guys that is only to be used for the commission members' use. Thank you.
And so before I forget, one little administrative thing, that sheet of paper that you held up that was distributed today for your requests on the list of departments. We actually have 30 departments. I noticed auditor's not on here for example, so we'll make sure that we have the other 4 lists to round that out and maybe show up on the org. It's actually on the org chart as well. So we've also combined departments over the years and some recently. So we just want to make sure we have the right number for you. So that's administrative, but I just want to be accurate and point that out. So I'm going to talk for a few minutes, and you have this information in your slides as the chairman pointed out, just to give you an overview of Johnson County. These are very high level demographics. And what I would ask during my presentation so that I can get through the high level information is, if you have questions, please jot them down, put them in the chat so you don't forget them, or whatever mechanism you want to use. And then in general, I'd like to wait for questions, just because I might either answer them, or you might realize that I'm not planning to go into a lot of detail, but I certainly can, or follow up if that's the desire of certain pieces of this. But I want to make sure that I give you the full picture that you deserve today to start your work. And so with that, what does Johnson County government look like? Who do we serve? And so I want to share some trend information with you. And so first is population. And what I'd point out here is that this is SERI data. And SERI has in 2020 has us at a population of 608,500. You may hear various numbers because there's different entities and methodologies to do population. So I have seen anything from 604,000 to 619, but we do have census data coming out. The county census data will be coming in a couple of months. I know that there's other census data that's been recently released. So look forward to the official what it is now, but that gives you an idea of the trends of the population. And there is a study done by Wichita State University Center for Economic Development and Business Research in the last few years, and they estimate by 2054 that our county will exceed 1 million in population. And so I will go to the next slide. And again, I'm going to go fairly fast because I'm just trying to give you a high level picture of Johnson County. And this shows you the population by age. One thing I'd like to point out here is that just 20 years from now, it's estimated that we will have 192,000 residents over 65 and older, which means our senior population will double in just 2 decades. as the retiring baby boomers continue to impact state and local aging services. So that definitely has an impact on our services that we provide as well. The next slide shows population by race. And you'll see that there's not a dramatic change from 2010 to 2019. However, you can see that we're a bit more diverse, and we're looking forward to seeing what the census information updates will bring in this area as well. Next page is household income, the median household income 10 years ago. And for a matter of reference, a lot of these I'm doing 10 years back because that's the last time a charter commission review was 10 years ago. So that's the context of why I chose those number of years. Median household income was 71,000 and now, or as of 91,000. And this isn't on the slide, but the mean household income or the average was 90,400 in 2010, and in 2020 is 121,930. And then you'll see that the percentage of households with Social Security income in 2010 was 22% and 26.9% as of 2019.
Penny, do you know if those figures are adjusted for inflation?
I am not certain about that. I'll have to find that out. But I can get back to you on that. And these are Siri. Some of these, well, this one is U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, so I have the source on each of these, but we can find out and get back to you. And then unemployment rate, you can see the trends there. And for you may be very interested since the pandemic and the impact, you can see in 2020, it got as high as 5.1%. But remember, coming out of the recession back in 2010, it was 6% or still somewhat in the recession. Now, 21 data, we have the first 2 months of unemployment in 21. It's not on here since it's not annualized, but January unemployment was 4.9%. In February, it was 3.1%. So I hope that trend continues. And then moving on to building permits to give you an idea of how's the economy doing in Johnson County over time and how are we doing now. And if you look at single family building permits, you can see that 2020, I think we're all a little surprised that the pandemic didn't really slow that down. And then if you look at specifically multifamily, you can see 19 and 20 is a little bit slower than past years. However, still pretty high numbers, close to 1,000 a year. So next slide shows home sales, and 2020 was the highest yet, even during a pandemic. So it's interesting data to look at the trends over the last 10 years and most recently, given where we're at and everybody wondering how is the economy doing? How is Johnson County doing? Next slide shows total valuation and over this period. And I went a little bit further back on this to include the beginning of the recession. And you can see how it's fluctuated over time. But what I would draw your attention to is, there was a period of, after coming out of the recession, and I think we all knew this or felt this in different ways on the residential side, especially, in 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19, there were, between 6 and 7% increases each year. But you can see it's slowing a little each year after that. So in 20, dropped to 5.6%. Still great that it's an increase, but just a slower increase. And then dropped to 5.23, estimated to be 4.29 for 22. And we'll be interested to watch that really closely going forward, because you'll see in a few minutes how much we depend on property taxes for our services. Next slide is poverty trends. And so you can see it's between 5 and 7% over this period. And the last few years have been, between 5 and 6%. What is the poverty level? It's 100% is family of 4 receiving $25,750 a year to live on, if you can picture that. The national rate for poverty is 14%, to give you a perspective. So that is a summary of who we serve. And again, it's very high level, very quick. I think most of you know generally some of those trends. And if you have interest in more of those trends, I have asked Frank Link with Mid-America Regional Council, their economist, and Doug Davidson with Siri to present to the Board of County Commissioners next Thursday under my report to give us an economic outlook. So if you're interested, stay tuned to that. Or, I don't know if you want those folks to speak to you, or we could provide their reports that they provide to the board if that's helpful. So now we're going to transition in how do we serve? How does Johnson County, how are we structured? How do we approach it so that this can help inform your work? And I want to kick that off with a video. And this is about 10 minutes long.
Serving the public is the ultimate goal of county government, and the structure of government in Johnson County starts with the people of Johnson County. They support county government with their tax dollars, and in return, county government strives to provide excellent service. Here's how county government works. Voters elect the Board of County Commissioners. 6 of them represent 6 separate districts. The 7th one is elected by the entire county and serves as board chairman. The commissioners hire the county manager to preside over many of the county's departments and agencies, and they appoint governing boards to be in charge of some of the others. The governing boards hire executive directors to run day-to-day operations. The Board of County Commissioners also appoints the appraiser. The appraiser researches property and assigns value to it. That helps determine property tax. 2 county offices fall under people who are elected separately from the Board of County Commissioners. They are the District Attorney's Office and the Sheriff's Office. The Johnson County Election Office is run by the Election Commissioner. That person is appointed by the Kansas Secretary of State. The Election Commissioner oversees all voter registration and elections in the county.
And this is on the machine.
Here you see staff from the Election Office training poll workers so they're ready to go for the next election. Here are some of the other services Johnson Countyans support with their tax dollars. The Department of Health and Environment does everything from gathering research to inspecting daycares. The Household Hazardous Waste Program helps Johnson County residents dispose of hazardous materials that they have in their homes. This department also provides immunizations and women's and men's health services. An in-house laboratory does many tests and draws specimens that it sends to external labs. Johnson County also has the Department of Aging and Human Services. Among other things, it runs the Meals on Wheels program.
Meals on Wheels is a service for our homebound seniors over 60 who are isolated or need assistance with food. We serve those 500 to 600 meals a day to our seniors with help from 250 volunteers each week.
We provide what we call our essential human services, and we provide those as a safety net, basically to help people remain independent in their homes with dignity, and we promote self-sufficiency.
Johnson County MedAct provides ambulance and emergency medical services everywhere in the county.
Johnson County MedAct provides emergency medical services and ambulance transportation to nearly 600,000 residents. We respond to over 41,000 calls for service annually from 17 stations. We value excellence, trust, compassion, service, and integrity.
Johnson County Developmental Supports provides services to people in the county with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Clients receive help with everything from housing to employment to finding health care.
Some of you as county employees may see some of our project search interns in your departments. Others may see people working in the community that we're supporting at grocery stores or other businesses across Johnson County. What we do here is we focus on people's abilities and help them be as independent and productive and integrated in the community as they can be.
People in the Treasury, Taxation, and Vehicles Department handle motor vehicle registration. They also keep records of land ownership and calculate the tax roll.
We operate in the county at 2 locations, in Mission and Olathe. These are open to the public for everything involving your license plates for your vehicle. So if you need to buy a new car, you're coming in here, you're going to register your vehicle with us. If every year you renew, you bring your renewal here as well.
The Financial Management and Administration Department pays the county's bills and handles payroll and employee benefits. The Sheriff's Office handles the county's law enforcement responsibilities.
We have 2 detention centers, one across the street from the courthouse and then one here at New Century. We have other divisions such as civil, where we serve civil papers all over the county. We have a courthouse security. We have a crime lab, which is pretty state of the art. We have investigations, we have patrol, we have many, many divisions.
In the Emergency Communications Center, dispatchers take calls for fire and ambulance emergencies in all Johnson County cities and unincorporated areas.
We also dispatch EMS for all of Miami County, which a lot of people don't know. Our dispatchers work 12-hour shifts. This is a 24/7 operation, 365 days a year.
Johnson County Wastewater handles the county's raw sewage. It treats around 16 billion gallons of wastewater a year.
After wastewater leaves your home, you take a shower or you flush the toilet, it goes out of your home into sanitary sewer mains. The water flows to the wastewater treatment plant through these sanitary sewer mains that are underneath streets and yards. Once it gets to the wastewater treatment plant, we remove the big materials like toilet paper or sticks or anything else that's been flushed down the toilet. And then we disinfect that wastewater before we then return it back to the stream.
Public Works constructs and maintains roads and bridges in all the county's unincorporated areas. In this project, county workers are raising the height of a road to improve safety at a railroad crossing. Public Works also handles snow removal.
The snow removal in the unincorporated area is a little more difficult than the cities. Our roads don't have streetlights. We don't have traffic signals at the intersections. And when it's dark, it's very difficult to know when there's a blanket of snow on the ground where the road is and where the ground is.
At Johnson County District Court, the clerk's office files and issues legal documents like marriage licenses, while the district attorney's office investigates crimes.
We file between 6,000 to 7,000 cases a year and charge individuals with crimes. It is our job to prosecute those cases with the assistance of law enforcement through the criminal justice system. We also have responsibilities in dealing with consumer protection violations throughout the county, involuntary commitments of individuals who have mental health issues. We have a number of other duties, such as dealing with our county traffic court.
Johnson County is one of 2 in the state to provide mental health services. The other is Sedgwick County. The Mental Health Center staffs a crisis line 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Anyone can call and have access to a licensed mental health professional. It's one of the many services the Mental Health Center provides.
Johnson County serves as the community mental health center licensed by the state of Kansas. We serve as the gateway to behavioral health services here in Johnson County. While we may not provide you services, we'll ensure that we assess you and determine the right level of care that you need and get you connected with those services.
The Johnson County Department of Corrections serves both the juvenile and adult offender population. It provides an array of services to change their behavior while protecting the community. Adult Services provides multiple levels of supervision for felony offenders. Juvenile Services provides supervision to youth offenders through house arrest and intensive supervision probation.
The Department of Corrections is also the county's gateway for the children in need of care and youth picked up for criminal activity. Our detention center is for youth awaiting trial.
Johnson County government operates 2 airports, Johnson County Executive and the New Century Air Center. At New Century, it also operates a railroad. The Johnson County Library serves over 2 million visitors from 14 library buildings. The Central Resource Library features a makerspace.
We have 3D printers, soldering kits, sewing machines. That complements what we have in about 1 million books. We offer downloads both in ebooks and magazines. We also have audiobook downloads, which are really, really popular nowadays.
To enhance people's quality of life, the Johnson County Parks and Recreation District provides fun and leisure in the great outdoors. It manages parks ranging in size from 44 to 2,000 acres.
JCPRD owns and maintains over 10,000 acres of park property throughout Johnson County, and we have a wide variety of park and recreation facilities that attract over 10 million visitors each and every year.
The many departments that support all of county government are called Central Services and can be found in the County Administration Building. They include the Auditor's Office, Budget and Financial Planning, Human Resources, and the Legal Department. The Department of Technology and Innovation provides technical support to the entire organization. Facilities Management is in charge of planning for, building, and maintaining all county buildings. The list of county functions goes on and on.
Public service allows you to give back to the community. And being part of Johnson County, not only are you providing the direct service as your employee title, but you're a part of something bigger.
Giving back to the residents of Johnson County, the people who make this a great place to live. Johnson County government was designed to work for them.
So thank you for letting me share that video. I hope that illustrates a little bit more of the what you see, the boxes on a piece of paper in the org chart, which really puts you in touch with how we serve the community. At least a few examples. We do have, as we mentioned earlier, about 30 departments, but we have over 187 programs, and those are just a highlight of some key programs. So on the next slide, how do we serve you? So how are we structured? And you can see, I know that you have talked about districts before. I know Chairman Eilert had mentioned this, but you can see the 6 districts there on your page. And we have a goal of trying to keep that within about the same population. So currently they're all roughly 100,000 population each district. And we do review that every 3 years and do redistricting as needed. And then the picture on the right shows the cities and the unincorporated area for Johnson County. So 40% is unincorporated area. And that just gives you an overall pictorial view of the districts and the cities within in the unincorporated area. Next slide, this is the org chart. It's pretty busy. It may be hard to read on the screen. I'm glad that you were emailed the org chart. So if it helps you to pull it up on your own computer, hopefully you can follow what I'm saying here. The yellow boxes indicate those positions, departments, directors that report either to the Board of County Commissioners or the county manager, or we have a shared responsibility for a few, and I'll point those out. And at the very bottom, you'll see on this slide, there's 2 different org charts. This one that I'm showing you now has FTEs on it, and FTEs is an acronym for full-time equivalents. So if you had 2 part-time employees, let's say they were half-time, that's 1 FTE. Or if you have 1 person that works full-time, that's 1 FTE. But if you did a head count of those 2 part-time folks, it would be 2. We look at FTEs. I just wanted to explain that for those of you that aren't familiar with that acronym. And one thing I'd point out here, and we're going to touch on this later when we look at financial trends. In 2008, the beginning of the recession, we had 4,100 employees. And you can see through the years how, especially through the recession, where we decreased over 10% of our workforce over 4 years. And in 2021, we have nearly the same number of pre-recession times. So that's one illustration of trying to be good stewards, and you'll see others coming up as well. So that's kind of the overall picture. The one other thing I'd point out on this FTE slide, and I'll break these down in the next few slides as well, but is that you can see that number, and it might be hard to read in the lower left corner, but it says overall FTEs 4,105, and then total under county manager's control is about half of that, a little bit less than half. And I'll touch on that as we go through, because there's elected officials and agency directors and others that are responsible for large chunks of our FTEs. And I'll talk about that in a minute and see what questions you may have related to that. The next slide is the same org chart, but this shows you dollars, budget dollars. So if you look at the overall budget, I am putting together, finalizing my proposed budget to the board of $1.2 billion that gets presented next week to the Board of County Commissioners. What makes it tricky is you can see that I have direct control over, a lot less than 1.2. So if you take the 1.2, you back out reserves, the total budget's 930 million. And then I have direct responsibility of 529, but yet I need to recommend a budget for the whole organization. So obviously, if I have direct control of 57% of the budget, then I have to work me and my team work very closely with all the others, those elected officials and agency directors. But it does make it a bit more complex when I don't have oversight, but I'm recommending what their budget level should be to the Board of County Commissioners. So that's overall. Now I'll start breaking down different pieces of the org chart to give you an understanding of how it kind of is structured and see what questions you may have. So the top box is obviously the residents of Johnson County. Residents of Johnson County is who we serve, and that's who elects the Board of County Commissioners. Also, they elect directly. If you look to the right of the Board of County Commissioners box at the top, you'll see the sheriff and the district attorney, and those are also elected at large. So then the next slide you can see is, if you go further to the right, there's the judiciary box, and that is mostly, that's the second bullet, but it's mostly state appointed, state-led, mostly state employees. There's a few county employees mixed in there. And before I leave this upper right part of the org chart, I did want to point out two adjustments that are kind of in transition, so you might see them different places. Law Library has 4 employees, but we are under review of where they fit in the mix. So you may see them under county manager or board oversight in some places, because we're just reviewing that right now. And the Justice Information Management System is the technology that supports the DA, the sheriff, and the judiciary. And so the oversight of that has been those 3, the administrative judge, DA, and sheriff, along with the county manager. But we have recently made a change where those 4 are advisory and then reports to the county manager, actually my designee, Maury Thompson, who's on this call as well. And then the election commissioner, if you go over to the left side of the top line of the left side of the county commissioners, you see the election commissioner appointed by the Secretary of State, yet they work very closely with us, with the county manager's office and the rest of the organization. And we do provide a lot of guidance. They follow our policies. They really work closely with our office, and we provide day-to-day support. Next slide. The positions that are appointed directly by the Board of County Commissioners is my position. And then you'll see the various boxes in yellow that report up through me or my designees. And then you'll see the auditor on the same line as the county manager. You'll see those lines that go directly to the Board of County Commissioners. The auditor and my position are the 2 positions that report directly to the Board of County Commissioners only. And the auditor function is an important function to be separate. And the chief legal counsel, you'll see a box that has a line to the county manager and the Board of County Commissioners. The chief legal counsel is appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. County manager has day-to-day oversight and works very closely with chief legal counsel. And the county appraiser, that is a joint kind of oversight with board and the county manager or designee. However, one thing that neither of us has any say on is how properties are valued. That is a state function, the state oversight, and we have to stay away from that part of it, but we can help them with day-to-day operations. So next slide, you'll see over farther to the left, very far left, upper left, statutory agencies. And these are statutory created agencies separate from county government for which we provide funding. And so if there's questions on that later, be happy to answer them, but we do include them in the budget allocation. And some of them have some state funding as well. The next are the fire districts. There's 4 of them, and you'll see on the org chart, this is on the far left, just under the statutory agencies, you'll see that one of them is yellow. So the Northwest Consolidated is the northwest part of the county, including DeSoto. Fire District 1 is the southwest part of the county, which includes Gardner and Edgerton. Consolidated Fire District number 2 is the Northeast Johnson County area. And then Fire District 2, the board of county commissioners actually serves as the governing board. For all 4 of these, they have their own boards, and the board of county commissioners, however, does approve their budget allocation each year, reviews it and approves it. So the next slide is other agencies and districts. And I draw your attention to the far right side of the org chart. You can see agencies. And I'll touch on airport last because that's a hybrid. So developmental supports, library, and parks all have their own agency boards that are appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. And the agency boards appoint their executive directors. And there's varying levels of statutes that govern these boards. And if there's questions on that later, we can get into those questions. I do put in my recommended budget, the agency budgets. They make their recommendations, and I work closely with those directors, the budget office and the directors, on what I put in my recommended budget. So there's no surprises for anybody. And they usually present during the budget process and bring their boards. The Johnson County Airport Commission is a hybrid. That is a change that we made a few years ago, and that the county manager or designee hires the airport director. The airport commission or the county manager can fire the director. So it's a hybrid and it's working well. So I know there'll be questions later on agencies likely. So that's just high level. Oh, and I do want to point out that mental health is used to be an agency, and that is now under one of my departments that I have oversight of. And that mental health has an advisory board. The next slide is the list of the departments that were in the other yellow boxes that reported up through me or my staff, mostly through assistant and deputies, and some directly to me. And so that's a list of departments. What helps supplement this information, and if there's questions on these, I can go into more detail, or if you want to bring in directors for certain areas, that's an option as well. But that paper that we submitted to you today that Greg pointed out earlier, it's organized. It has organized the whole org chart, number of boxes, all the various departments into categories of public safety, judicial, and emergency services in one chunk, infrastructure services in another, culture and rec, health and human services, records and taxation, and support services. So there's a lot of ways you can look at the list of departments. So I did want to point that out. One thing I'd say here before we leave kind of the overall org chart is that I have worked in local government for 29 years, and I've worked for cities and counties, and all that I've worked for have been council manager form of governments. I worked for the 7th largest city in the country, and I say that because it wasn't as complex. San Antonio was not as complex as Johnson County government for the reasons that I just stated. When you work for a city, all departments report to the city manager. And so those departments that we work with that are not that report to me or my designees, sometimes take a lot more of our time and focus because there's more negotiating, there's their boards to consider, or if they're elected directly, there's other dynamics. So just pointing that out, the level of complexity. For those of you that are more familiar with city government, it's a little bit more complex for a lot of the structure things I just highlighted in the org chart. Okay, so moving to, just as a footnote, the changes to the organization structure. Here's a list of departments that we've combined in the last 10 years. I have worked on 7 of these that are highlighted. And just to give you a perspective, 2 of them saved over $1 million ongoing savings. And that was the transition to ATA and the combining the health and environment departments. And that just gives you an idea that we can look for continuous improvements, but we are focused on efficiencies and how we can more effectively govern. But that just gives you a few examples of some changes since the last time the Charter Commission met. And those are usually recommended by staff and approved, and the approved have to be approved by the board, county commissioners. And so the role, I've touched on this a little bit, but our charter calls for a professional county manager to serve as chief administrative officer of the county. Our county government follows the council manager form. The elected governing body, our Board of County Commissioners, is responsible for legislative functions such as establishing policy, setting overall priorities for the organization, and approving an annual budget. And that's similar to other boards of directors, whether it's corporate or nonprofit, et cetera. The legislative body appoints a professional manager to oversee the administrative operations, implement policies, and advise and manage the day-to-day operations. And as I mentioned earlier, I do one of my biggest job duties is presenting an annual budget for the full year for next year. So the one I'm proposing next week to the Board of County Commissioners is for the 2022 fiscal year, which is also the calendar year. And so that is the single most important policy document for the year. So we've been busy working on that. The manager position is similar to that of corporate chief executive officer or CEO, providing professional management to the board of directors. And so just to give you some background on my experience, I've worked for cities and counties, and as I mentioned, council manager form of government, and that is really where you have professional staff. So it's not just the manager, it's staff as well, that are non-political, that are neutral, that really look out for the best of the county and give advice to the board. And then the board either takes that advice or adjusts it or gives us other direction. But they are the policy makers. And so as there is an organization called International City and County Manager Association that really is a professional organization for the managers and council manager forms of government. I've been a member of that for 29 years and have worked in city and county offices for CMO office for 27 years, just as a matter of perspective. But our staff, the deputy county managers and assistant county managers, have various experience that bring management experience to our office. The next slide is the county authority versus city authority in home rule. And it's a little bit different. So I want to point this out as well. And if there's questions, Cindy can help me answer this. But for home rule, the cities have constitutional home rule, which means authority comes directly from the people and restrictions by legislature must be uniform. So what's different for counties is that it's statutory home rule, which means legislature can directly restrict or repeal the county's authority. There are numerous statutory exceptions to the county's authority, but that's just, when you say home rule, it's slightly different for cities and counties. Now for an overall financial overview. Again, I'll try to stay high level, and if you want more detail, if you have questions, and want to dive into any more of the budget, our budget director is on with us today in case there's questions today, but you could certainly ask him or his staff to come back and dive into more details if you have interest in doing that. So first slide is—
Penny, this is the clerk. I need to make a statement for the record that Britt McCune left the meeting at 5:10 p.m. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so for a financial overview, you see this, the amount of ad valorem tax in the 2008 budget is the base year, and the rest of this is indexed off that base year. How much ad valorem tax? The gray line would show if we had the same tax rate in 2008 and increased it at the rate of CPI and population growth. That's what it would look like. What we actually did is the yellow line. And that's consistent with what I mentioned earlier. Through the recession, we cut over 400 positions over 4 years. And so that's the type of impact that it had financially. And so if we continued at that rate, we're still just under that. So I think that shows you a trend line of, again, trying to be financial stewards. And the next slide has a similar overall picture, but it's slightly different. So if you took our number of full-time equivalents, FTEs, and if we increased from 2008, what the number of FTEs at that point at the rate of population, that would be the green line. But what we actually performed at was the red line. And again, that's consistent with how we pulled together to try to make it all work and really didn't impact services. And so I think you should be proud of your government that was able to achieve that at the staff level and the board level.
Penny, quick question. Does that include the sheriff's department?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. That's the overall budget, which does include the sheriff's department. Next slide is a county mill levy comparison. And again, I think you will be proud of this accomplishment. If you look at the bottom line, Johnson County, what we have on here are the 5 most populous counties in the state. So that's us, Shawnee, Douglas, Wyandotte, and Sedgwick. And you can see where their property tax rates are. Why have we included McPherson, Harvey, and Potawatomi? Because they are the lowest in the state, regardless of population, except for us. And you can see how much lower we are than anybody and our other urban counties. So you might think to yourself, well, yes, that's great, but we also have higher value of homes. And so we have factored that into in the next slide. So if you factor that in with the median household income and then make the adjustments to the mill rate, you can see we're still the lowest and about a third lower than our the next lowest of Sedgwick when it's adjusted for household income. And we're still about a third lower. So that's our kind of performance on mill levy in comparison to the state. The next slide is what have we done in most recent years? I didn't go all the way back, but if you want that information, we can certainly share it. But we wanted to show you what the current mill levy rate is. General operations is in blue, but the overall, if you include parks and library, that's the overall mill rate. The thing I'd point out here is we did a quarter mill rollback in 18. We did a quarter mill rollback in 19. We did a quarter mill rollback in 21. And I'm proposing a quarter mill rollback for 22, which isn't presented yet, but isn't public yet, but the board knows. Board knows that's coming. So 4 of the 5 years from 18 to 22 have quarter mill rollback built in. And so that's 1 complete mill over that period of time. 1 mill today equates to $11.9 million, for example. So next slide, breakdown of the budget. What are all the components that make up this $1.2 billion budget? So the biggest pieces of the pie, you'll see county general services, and that's $418 million. The next biggest piece is reserves. So that you can see at $315 million. A big portion of that is wastewater, but also all of our funds. And then the next biggest slice is in orange, and that's wastewater. The next slide shows revenues and the revenue picture overall. And you can see the 2 biggest slices are taxes. So the first one is ad valorem tax, and that's almost a quarter of our revenue source, $216 million. And the next slice is sales and other taxes at 15% or $138 million. And I will say on sales tax, before we leave that, is that the county sales tax is 1.475%, and that it includes a local sales tax of 0.5%, public safety sales tax. There's 3 of them, each are at 1/4 stormwater sales tax at 0.1%, and Research Triangle sales tax at 0.125%. And then the property tax distribution, this shows you kind of the breakdown there. And the green pieces are the county, and that equates to about 50, well, the county general is 15%, and then you see parks and library in addition to that. And you can see of your taxes what portion goes to county versus cities, schools, et cetera. And the next pie distribution for sales tax shows ours is about 10% of sales tax and then you'll see states the largest. And the next slide, I want to transition, I just have a few slides left. So how well is Johnson County doing? And there's a lot of ways to look at that, but I'll give you a few things to consider. And if you want more information on these or ask others, certainly we can share that. We do, as a workforce, as our board, we do have a focus on outcomes. How do we make an impact to those that we serve? And we increasingly rely on data-driven decisions. We have work to do here, but we've come a long way. And I think you'd be really proud of, if you hear from departments, they can share with you specifics of how they're using that. I'm going to jump to high performance organization. You may hear that as HPO. That means we try to be the best. We try to do it always better, faster. And if we can do it cheaper, then we'll do it cheaper. So that's a crude way of looking at it, but it's really looking at trying to be more efficient, more effective. And no matter what your title, no matter what your position in the county, you have something to contribute. And we try to instill a culture that promotes innovation and continuous improvement. And best practices, I could give you a long list of best practices of our various services that I'm very proud of. You know a lot of them probably. I'll throw a few out. Our Parks Department was #1 in the country, got the gold medal. One Parks district gets it a year. We received that in recent years. I know Leslie Riviola is the chair of the Parks Board, for example, and she's on this commission. Wastewater has won platinum awards from their professional organization for various of our plants, which means out of 2,000 things that they come in and look at and review, we've gotten 100% or in the high 90s accuracy. And I think that's something you should be proud of, because if you're not thinking about wastewater, then we've done our job. And so those are just a few examples, but we strive to be best practice. Criminal justice, there's a lot of partnerships that we have with cities and schools, and we have partnerships amongst our judiciary and our sheriff and our DA and just corrections, a whole mental health. And so we strive for best practices. And then I'll touch on this here in a minute, but the pandemic response and recovery through Johnson County government into an area that we didn't expect to be, which is leadership during a pandemic. And so for our board and our staff, there is a lot that I could talk about, but it's probably not, probably don't want to take your time to do it. And I'll touch on that a little bit in a few slides. So at the top, it says different kind of governments. And we try to be, a government that is all these things on this slide. And I think you'd be proud of your government, how it performs if you look at the data. And so a few things to highlight that you might consider in the data is our ETC survey, which is our community satisfaction survey. And, we outperform most local governments in the country. And you can see as a place to live, high 90s, a place to raise your children, mid 90s. And it's just, I've worked for other local governments, and every place I've worked used the ETC survey. They didn't look like this, so except for Overland Park, which is part of Johnson County. So the next slide is another indication, just general perceptions of the county, quality of life. And this is 2005 to 2020. The last slide had, okay. So I'm sorry, it was the same number of years. So you look at that again in the 90s for quality of life and overall image and public safety. So those are things that we generally know, but here's some evidence of what the Johnson County residents think. In the next slide, you'll see the feeling of safety broken down a bit more. Again, in the 90s on the top few things, and the others range, but there is a high level of satisfaction in these areas. And for those areas that are less than 90s, if you compare nationally, we're still in the top performing counties and cities. Okay, next slide is perceptions of service delivery. And a lot of detail on the slide, but we look at surveys, and this is one example of where we, when we do review budgets and we look at the budget, when I'm presenting my proposed budget to the Board of County Commissioners, I look at things like this because they start to get into what's the satisfaction level of different services. And we also look at the lens of the Board of County Commissioners priorities for the year as well. Another example of performance is our AAA bond rating, which is the highest bond rating you can get for a local government. And all three rating agencies have rated us this at AAA. And there's various ways of that they look at the ratings. But to achieve all three, only 42 out of 3,141 counties get that. And that's the top 1.5% of all counties for financial performance. So you should be proud of that as well. I will just end on one slide that talks a bit about our workforce, because you can't talk about Johnson County government and not acknowledge the hard work that not only our Board of County Commissioners, but our staff does every day in and day out. Public service is a focus. And, it was evident to me, and hopefully all of you, through the pandemic. We hadn't led through a pandemic before. And, our country struggled with some tough decisions. Our local government struggled with tough decisions. Our board was thrown into being the Board of Public Health during a pandemic. And also over emergency management for the county, which includes 20 cities. But we really focused on communication. We wanted communication to be out there. We didn't have all the answers. We wanted to share with you what we knew and why decisions were being made. And something that I'm really proud of as well is not only those that were on the front lines of the pandemic or the decision makers of the pandemic, but also all of those other 187 services that I talked about or that we highlighted in the video. They continued to provide, with a few exceptions of temporary period of time, we continued to provide county services. The array of county services, when the community needed it most, we figured out a way to get it done. And we might have done it differently, might have used technology more, for example, or drop-offs or hours adjusted, et cetera. But I just couldn't stop myself from saying how proud I am of our workforce to be able to get you these results financially, to show that we're good stewards, but also the quality of services. And so with that, I stand for questions.
Thank you, Penny. That was very comprehensive. A lot going on, complex as you mentioned. Questions for Penny with respect to any of her presentation? We have 29 minutes left, so we have some time for questions. Just identify yourself and ask your question. I'll try. I will not, unless we get a lot of confusion, worry about calling on individuals. Penny, I think you can remove if you'd remove your slide and somebody might want to go back to slides. Let's leave it up. Let's start with Dawn. I see your hand up.
Yes, you talked about how you combined a couple of departments and saved $1 million. Yes. And just wanted a few more specifics on what innovation, what did you do to save that money? Sure.
So the two examples that I mentioned related to the $1 million savings, ongoing savings. So, over 5 years, that's $5 million, for example. But one is the ATA contract to manage our transit services. We used to have a transit department, but when we became part of the metro system through the mechanism of a management agreement, then we were able to tap into their expertise or their centralized financial functions or their centralized IT functions, for example, or marketing power that they had with the organization, the Metro organization. So we were able to get about $500,000 savings ongoing by not having those personnel costs, but they could maybe do the services that we had with less staff because they already had a number of staff doing those functions. To add one more jurisdiction, maybe didn't require a full position, for example. So that was one example. The other example is health and environment departments. Combining the two, we were able to find some synergies where there was overlap in types of services. Some of it was clerical when you combine a department, some of it's clerical, some of it's marketing dollars you can do or outreach dollars. We were able, because it had two executive directors and one of the executive directors retired, we were able to not fund that executive position. So those are some examples.
Thank you.
Greg Smith. Then Mike Bain.
Greg is
Greg.
muted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Greg Smith. Penny, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Hey, just for context, I would really like to see the last 4 slides that show the 2021 budget. Can you provide for the commission the same data for the last 10 years so that we can have some context as to what the budget was, how it's gone up, down, what departments have increased, decreased, that kind of thing?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So basically, that same pie chart, but the pie chart for prior years, Greg, is what you're looking for? Or are you looking for?
Maybe the page numbers would help, just to make sure I got the right ones.
Change in percentage up or down?
Yeah, the breakdown of the budget.
That one, page 33.
Not just that one, the last 4 slides. So the breakdown of the budget, the revenues, property tax distribution, and sales tax distribution for those 10 years.
Sure, we can do that. Thank you for the clarification.
Yep, thank you.
Welcome.
Mayor Bain and then Jimmy Giona.
Thank you, Penny. Nice presentation. I'm going to put you on the spot here for a little bit. Are there any things you would like the Charter Commission specifically to review or address?
Yeah. Mike, I think we were going to try to save those for her future presentation and keep this. If that's okay, we're going to give her a chance to do that. But really, for the first part, try to be objective and informational. Is that okay? Jimmy?
Thank you, Chairman. Jimmy Giona here. Hi, Penny.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for the time this evening. I was wondering, and you don't have to go back to the slide, but I know there was a slide that showed that we reduced job functions, I believe over 400 through the recession, the Great Recession of 08. Do you have any numbers on how many of those positions we got back prior to pandemic? So that would be through like January 2020? Or do I got to kind of just guess with that?
We can give you more information, and I think Scott Neufeld, our budget director, is on here. I don't know if I will be looking at Scott to help me with that. I don't know if Scott needs any clarifying information, or if Scott, you got what he's looking for.
Thanks, Penny. What I heard was you would like to know of the 400, I think it's 412 positions that we eliminated, how many positions came back in a same job description, sheriff's deputies, budget analyst, whatever. And so, or that's what I heard. For instance, my office cut a position and it's never come back. We have some other positions that are different, but so I wouldn't count that because that function has been absorbed and we haven't had anybody. So that's kind of what I heard.
Yeah, that's correct, Scott. Thank you.
Okay.
I know the full-time equivalent's on there, but the similar job function of returning that was absorbed by others.
We will do that, and we will try to be as down the middle on matches and we'll shoot for next month on that. We're kind of in our crazy time of the year, so we'll do.
Yeah, no problem. It could be any time in the next, 60
Okay.
days, whenever. I appreciate it. Thanks, Chairman.
Other questions?
This is Linda Sater, the clerk. I need to state that Joy Costin left the meeting at 5:36 p.m. Thank you.
I don't see other hands at this point, but if you want to speak, just identify yourself and ask Penny.
I think
Any
there may be a
questions?
question in the chat, maybe, Greg.
Oh, a question, what percentage of general fund budget is in reserves?
Scott, can you help me there?
Yeah, right now, the general fund reserves are pretty substantial. The percentage, let me see. Actually, I have a file open. Let me make sure I'm looking at the right.
Or we can follow up with you. We can.
Yeah, let me do that. That won't take that long, but I will tell you that Penny and I have so many numbers in our head that I might give you the wrong one. And because there's a total reserve, there's restrictions, and then there's unrestricted. And so it's several numbers with percentages and dollars amount, and it's probably better in writing anyway. So I'll get that to you guys shortly.
It looked like the total reserves of 315 in a budget of 1.2
Yeah,
would be about in the mid to high 20%, but some of those are restricted to specific uses. Is that what I heard, Scott?
yes, and the general fund portion is our largest fund, but there's laying out the total reserves and the unrestricted. Public safety sales tax 3, for instance, is funding the courthouse and the medical examiners. We're ahead of the collections, but the payments are catching up. So there's quite a few reserves, but they can only go for that sort of thing. So we'll get that on paper and hopefully explain it in a way that makes sense.
Okay, good question in the chat. Feel free to put them in the chat and Brenda will remind me to look.
This is Mike Boehm. Following up on that, Scott, Penny during her presentation mentioned a large number of the reserves was due to, I believe it was wastewater. Would you kind of clarify that, just some more details? Is that because of the construction of a new project or things of that nature?
I'll add that to my response, Mayor Boehm. That's a great comment. The rationale there is we're going to have a number of years where we're paying debt service on the Tomahawk expansion and still sending flow to Kansas City, Missouri. So in order to smooth out the rates, we intentionally built up those reserves, and I'll add that to that response, not just the general fund.
Well,
Mr. Chairman, Randy Hutchins, I have a question.
Go, Randy.
Penny, first of all, great presentation. One quick question I do have is, what is the unincorporated population of the 604,000 people?
I'll get you that exact number. I'll tell you roughly, but then I'll follow up with an exact. I think it was in the range of 15 to 20,000. Does that sound right, Scott?
I would have guessed lower, but I think my number is older, so you're probably right.
Let me get back to you on that so I can give you an accurate number. I don't have that exact number.
I will say that over the years that as the land area becomes smaller, the population has not really gone down.
Okay, one other budget question. Of the 315 million, is there a portion of that budget that's earmarked for the pandemic impact, or how are we doing from the pandemic impact to the budget?
So we received 116 million last year in CARES Act relief funding. CRF is what we tend to call it. A lot of that went out to the community, and a lot went to additional expenses in public health, PPE, all this, so all the activities that we've talked about. There were a number of expenses of staff that the work they did was eligible for reimbursement that were already budgeted. And so at the end of the year, we had approximately 32 million of those expenditures. Public safety, for instance, the running a jail in the coronavirus met that criteria. So those had already been previously funded. So that is when we get to the fund balance response, we'll outline that impact because our general fund reserves are higher than they normally are, in large part due to that, and also because we cut back expenditures early in case the shutdown was more severe and had a larger impact on our revenues than it ended up having. We ended up having a decent year, slightly below budget, but not nearly as bad as it looked in March and April. So we ended up the year in an extremely strong position with reserves because of those two reasons. And I'll be able to outline that in my general fund response. It keeps getting more complex as we go.
Thank you. Just a follow up. Is there a state requirement in the amount of reserves that a county is allowed to have on hand at any point in time?
Not that I'm aware of. We focused most of our reserve policy decisions with regard to the rating agencies. We have a AAA, and that helps immensely with debt, the interest rates we get. As far as I know, counties are all over the place in terms of their reserves, and I don't know of anything that's driven by the state in that regard. I will double check, but I don't think that there is. If I'm wrong, I'll double check. If I'm wrong, I'll add that to the memo on fund balance.
Thank you.
Sure.
There was a question directly to me about litigation expenses. And I think, so Scott and Cindy Dunham, you might talk about where those funds come from for litigation expenses. And there was a question related directly to the DA. So I don't know if DA expenses for litigation are actually different than the rest of our litigation expenses, but Scott, I'll look to you and maybe Cindy could add.
Sure.
If I can chime in, this is Cindy. I think the question, and I don't want to put words in the mouth, but I think this goes to the issue last week passed by the board, providing funding to the district attorney's office due to the need for the backlog of cases and the need to employ several, temporarily employ, I can't remember if it was 3 or 4 assistant district attorneys to work on the backlog of cases and the funding, the source of those funds. I think the question might have been geared toward, which my recollection was, and Scott, please correct me, I believe it was out of the coronavirus relief funds.
That was my recollection as well, Cindy.
Cindy, you cut out for me. Could you repeat what it's from?
The coronavirus relief funds, that was the source of the funding. It was under $1 million. I want to say it was in the 800 some, maybe
860,000.
Thank you all.
Okay, question in the chat about, in addition to tracking full-time equivalent employees, do you have metrics on staff retention or turnover?
Yes. The turnover for the whole organization usually is between 11 and 12%, but there are pockets that have a higher or actually than lower. So we do keep an eye on that, yes. And I don't know if you want detail on that, but that's the rough number overall.
Yeah, if we could add that to your staffing breakdown. Thank you for asking the question. This is Greg Shelton.
Okay. So you want specifically turnover by program area? I mean, like.
Yeah, I think just departmentally would be great.
Current year?
Yeah, unless we have a time frame we're all trying to stick to for last 5 or whatever.
And I think generally, when Maury is putting stuff together for us in the future, tonight we have Penny in front of us, but what I've asked staff to do is, if we get a question about data during the meeting, if they come back to me after the meeting and say, we don't keep it that way, we keep it this way, we're going to present it the way it's most easily retrievable unless we figure out that we need something in more detail for the commission. I hope that sounds fair to everybody. I don't know, Penny, exactly how you keep turnover, but if it's by department or by levels or whatever, let's first look at what you keep that's easily retrievable by human resources.
Sounds good. We'll start with that and then see if that answers the question. Thank you.
That fair enough, Greg?
Yeah, that was my thumbs up. Yep.
Okay. We have a question about cemetery and drainage districts and townships, and how do they interact with the county?
Well, I might look to Cindy Dunham to start this, and Scott could add, but they really are separate districts.
This is Cindy Dunham. That's the primary answer, is that they are separate districts, separate. It's not that we don't interact with them, but they are separate entities, and not generally part of Johnson County government. So if there's a specific question regarding them, we can answer that.
They have their own taxing authority and they're statutorily created entities.
Correct.
One thing I would add is that if you go on the county website, there's a section up at the masthead that says departments, and go to the records and tax administration department. They're alphabetical. They have the abstracts on there for a number of years, and you can flip through there and see the different taxing entities as far as ad valorem taxation throughout the county. It's got the county, it's got the school districts and everything. Yeah, Maury, the department has changed names to Treasury. Help me out, Maury. Treasury, Tax, and Vehicles, but the website still says RTA because I went up there today. Anyway, that tax roll has a wealth of information as it relates to valuation and ad valorem. So it's very helpful if anybody's curious about those smaller entities and how many we have across the county.
Other questions while we have Penny in this initial discussion and Scott? Penny, you would have gotten 100% of the customer satisfaction if the gentleman at JCDS had a Kansas City Chiefs artwork instead of a New England Patriot artwork.
Is that all it takes to get 100%? I could work on that.
I think that's
it. Penny, I have one question. This is Brenda Sharp. Thanks for the great presentation. Just as Johnson County Mental Health was moved back under the county's umbrella, are there any plans in the near future to move anything else in or out? That way, I don't think that there are, but I just want to verify that.
So I touched on one, and it's a smaller one, but it's just really clarifying by looking at records, and we're reviewing the law library. And so it's a 4 FTE. So I don't know if you guys really are, I'm not suggesting.
No, I was thinking about the bigger buckets. So,
but not anything under review at this point. Nope. That I'm aware of. And I will check with Maury and Scott. Am I missing one?
No,
I know we've done some recent ones.
No, the thing I would add, and Cindy can jump in, is that the Park District and the Library Board are state statute. The Airport Commission, as mental health used to be, and JCDS is county policy. So Penny answered the question about nothing being under consideration, but when the Mental Health Board was disbanded, the county commissioners took on the role of the Board of Mental Health, and we have shared capacity with the Airport Commission. But with regard to the remaining ones, Only JCDS would be a policy decision, and the airport commission.
I think, sorry, Scott, I mean, thank you.
No,
I think
that's it.
Brenda's question was more broad. Are there, besides the agencies, are there other areas? Is that what your question was, Brenda? Under consideration besides agencies? Or were you-
Actually, it really was around the agencies. I knew the two that weren't eligible, but I didn't know if there were any plans or thinking around, moving JCDS for instance, under the county purview.
And I would share, Brenda, that for the last 15, 17 years, I've been trying to get the budget and financial planning department with the governing board, and I just haven't made any headway. So I keep reporting to Penny. So
be careful what you ask for.
I'm kidding.
I think, Maury, that you're kind of taking notes on behalf on behalf of the group, that when we do the individual departments, we ask them to identify early on where they fit and if they are quasi-independent based on or state statute created as opposed to Johnson County policy created, that be an early part of their presentation. So there are certain things we can do, certain things we can't do, or the county can't do. And knowing that up front probably is helpful.
Will do.
Thanks, Maury.
You bet, Greg.
Other questions? We are at 5:54. I first thought we were going to might get done a little early. I guess we might get done a little early, but Penny, that was very thorough. Review the slides as we go, folks, especially the organizational chart, because that's, I think, what we're supposed to be doing is reviewing the charter that creates the county manager form of government with our commissioners and our county manager professional staff. So it's a good place to start. On May 10th, we will be fully virtual, and we will hear from the sheriff, the district attorney, and the chief judge. At that time, we'll figure out who we want to try to get for May 26th. Frankly, if we can, and then it'll be whether I can get to Linda on time, because Linda will do it, I know, as soon as she can, but a doodle poll out on the department so you can prioritize who we might want to hear from on May 26th. So we can announce that and have that in the agenda on May 10th, which is our goal. Anything else for the good of the cause at this point? Questions or comments?
If I could, Greg, I just want to say thank you to everybody on this Charter Commission for taking the interest in looking at this. I know it's a statutory requirement, but you guys have agreed to put in hours to study this, and however our staff can be a resource, just let us know. I appreciate your attention.
Thank you, Penny. If there's nothing else to come before the commission, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So motion, Jimmy Guyana.
I saw, I think, Mayor Mickelson first for the motion.
Second.
Second by
Wendy.
By Wendy. So motion by Eric and a second by Wendy. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those no. We are adjourned. We'll see you on May 26th at 4 p.m. and you'll get the link. Thank you all.